Hello, hello. It's a Thursday morning. I'm always worried when I start speaking if my voice actually comes out without cracking too much because these are usually the first words I say to anybody. The rest of my family is sleeping, but sounds okay. All right, today we're going to talk about phobias, files, and then a few other words. But before we get to that, I got my sweatshirt on for Bitcoin. It's my crypto moon boy sweatshirt. Bitcoin needs some help, man. It's just kind of flat. So hopefully it'll have a nice big jump before the end of the year. I know some people are watching Bitcoin. Let's go. Let's go, Bitcoin. Let me share the screen here. And we have a couple words there that have nothing to do with files and phobias. Maybe I should talk about what yesterday in class, I think we talked about what a phobia is. Right? It's a fear of something. But file, that has a PH in it. Phile. File means a deep love. A deep love. Like it can be actually like an unhealthy love, but all these are a good love, a good love. Because you have where that word comes from. If it helps you remember, like pedophile, the love of children, that's obviously a bad thing. So when you hear file, it could be like the extreme love in a way that's not healthy. I think all of these today that we discussed, though, they are healthy, like a love of books, a bibliophile. Fun to say. How can that be wrong? Bibliophile. All right, but we got to get to that first. And before we do that, there are a couple other. And of course, we have the old ads. Let's see, try to get rid of them so they're not too distracting. But the first two words, Foresight and Fortnite. So not the game, not the game. So foresight, think about before. So it happens before. So you have like sight before it actually happens. So maybe telling the future, but maybe not though. But let's look at the definition. The ability to predict what will happen or be needed in the future. And there you have a person looking into a crystal ball. They're predicting the future. Now, doesn't have to be predicting the future. We got snow yesterday, right? I looked at the weather report. I knew that it was going to snow. And I know we just had a bunch of like warm days. It's been a long time since we've had snow. So I had the foresight to dig out my scraper and put it in the trunk of my car. So I had the foresight. Like I knew that it was probably going to be snowing when we get out of school. So I had the foresight to get out that scraper. So as long as it doesn't have to be weather related. A couple of the examples I was thinking like, hey, it's going to be cold for recess. So hopefully you have the foresight to wear a jacket, something like that. It doesn't have to be weather related, but just if you're trying to prepare for something. So let's say right now you're getting really good grades. You're trying really hard with your schoolwork, which a lot of you are, not all of you, but that happens every year. But for those of you who are really trying hard, you probably have the foresight to know that you need really good grades. You need to get into those good study habits so you can get good grades in high school. And if college is important to you, well, you want to have those good grades. So you have the foresight to realize that it's going to help you in the future. That's foresight. Hope that helps. Now, the next one is Fortnite. Fortnite. Pronounced just like the game. Same word and everything. I'm not sure where the game got this definition from, but it literally just means a 2-week period. So I know teachers in Auburn, we get paid every fortnight. It's an older term. It's not really used that much, but if you ever hear it, maybe in some future reading, and you hear Fortnite, probably, maybe, but probably not the game. It probably just means 2 weeks. So if you're reading anything like Shakespeare or Charles Dickens, it might be in high school, and you come to that word fortnight, just know it's 2 weeks. All right, let's skip this ad. Tariff, rigid, chronic are the next three. A tariff. Let's think of it like this. Well, let's look at the definition first. It is a tax on imports, a tax on imports. So let's talk about what an import is. That's goods made in another country. And I'm going to use cars for this one. So anything made in another country, it's imported to us. So a lot of maple syrup is imported from Canada. We have some good maple syrup that's made here in Maine. It's not made, is it? Produced. Let's say it's produced here in Maine, Vermont. So those aren't imported, but the stuff from Canada is imported. Now, a tariff. I want to talk about cars here for a second. Ford cars. It's an American car, right? I don't know how many are still made in the United States, but let's pretend they all are. A lot of times, what car companies will do, or any companies, they will move their factories to a country where they don't have to pay the workers as much. And the shipping costs, they'll have to ship it here, which will be expensive, but it's still cheaper to pay other people besides Americans to work for cheap. But let's say there's a tariff on cars. It probably is. So Ford, because it's made here in the United States, would not pay a tariff. It's not imported. But let's say Toyota, which is the kind of cars my wife and I drive, they last forever. Toyota's, it's a Japanese car company. Some of them are made in the United States. But let's say that some or all of them are made in Japan. The United States government would charge a tariff to bring that car into the United States just so it can compete with American cars. Hope that makes sense. That's the government trying to get the American people to buy American products. Tariffs are pretty rare these days. Just know extra money we have to pay on goods imported from another country. The next one is rigid, and that means not flexible. So you can have, there are some rulers. This is one I was thinking about, for math class. If you have to measure something, sometimes there's a ruler made from wood that would be rigid. You can't bend it. It'll snap if you do. But then there are some really flexible rulers. So if something can't be bent, you can call it rigid. So it could be literally not flexible. But we could also have some rules that are rigid. There's no wiggle room there. Let's say there's a big project due, and the due date is rigid. Let's say it's due on Friday. There's no wiggle room. You can't turn it in late. If it's really rigid, you can't even turn it in early. It has to be on that date. Rigid, no flexibility. So rules can be rigid. Just, the law of speeding, 50 miles over the speed limit, that's pretty rigid. You're not going to get a lot of flexibility there. The police officer who finally catches up to you is not going to say, it was close. That's pretty rigid. You shouldn't be speeding 50 miles over the speed limit. Now, if it's 5 miles over, it might be a little more flexible. You're probably not getting stopped. Rigid can literally be rigid, or a little bit of flexibility there with rules and such. Hope that helps. The next one, chronic. Whenever I hear chronic, I think of pain. Doesn't have to be, but this is the most common way you'll hear chronic. So chronic means continuing for a long time. And if you see that picture, kind of looks like George Bush. I don't know if it is one of our former presidents. It does look like George Bush. Probably not, though. But hang on. I went to the wrong screen for a second. Chronic. It means continuing for a long time. So if you have chronic pain, chronic headache, as you get older, you might have a chronic backache. That could be a problem. That could be a chronic problem. So anything that continues for a long time, and you'll probably hear it with pain. But you could have like a chronic problem. Let's say you have neighbors and they are really loud. That would be a chronic problem. Happens often. Chronic. Hopefully that helps. Lucid. Now somebody, I'm not going to mention their name. Somebody mentioned something about the dentist a couple days ago, and it reminded me of lucid. A lot of times you'll hear lucid dreams. Lucid dreams. Now, what does that mean? It means easy to understand, clear, rational. Make that a little bigger. Sane. So, two things. Let's say older people. Now, unfortunately, when you get older, you start losing your mind. You know, you're not as sharp as you once were. But you could describe, oh, today is my mom's like 75th birthday. I still think she's quite lucid. I still think she's okay. But if older people are still really sharp, they know exactly what's going on, you could call them lucid. Call them lucid. You might also have a lucid dream. A lucid dream. So when you're sleeping and it seems really real, that's lucid. And you might also be the person that mentioned that at the dentist. I think they were in block D, right? Block D. I know. Maybe you remember who you are. But you said that the gas didn't work on you when you were having some surgery done to your teeth. Well, you could describe yourself as being lucid at that point. You don't want to be lucid then. Lucid, it means wide awake. So lucid dreams, older people can be lucid. Hope that helps. Next one here. Now we get into, are they all files for a little while? Okay. The next four are files. Now, again, I want to say it one more time. Why do we have to learn Latin and Greek roots? I was asked that question in high school. Well, because so much of our language is made up of Latin and Greek roots, and they all mean the same thing. Like every time you see file, that means the love of something. So when you come to an unknown word in your reading, maybe on a really high stakes test, and you at least can see file, it might not stop you in your reading. You could continue reading like, okay, it's something to do with love or something like that. Or if you're working on the SATs, which is really important to get into college, and you have like 4 answers, but one of them has something to do with love, and the word you're looking for has file in it, you can try to narrow down some of those options, and it might help you do better on the test. So bibliophile. There are actually 2 Latin and Greek roots here. Biblio. I do believe it comes from the French. In French, a library is a bibliothèque. So anytime you see biblio, think of book. File, love. So most English teachers are bibliophiles. We love to read books. And I really can't turn, I can turn my screen. So you will see, no, you can't see it. There's some books behind me right there. Right there. There's some books behind me. Up here. Some books over there on the shelves. If I went upstairs, I have like 3 big bookshelves. I'm definitely a bibliophile. Remember, especially when it comes to Stephen King, right? Big. And there's a YouTube book over there too. So if you're wanting to start a YouTube channel, I would recommend that. The YouTube formula. It helps. Bibliophile. You can learn a lot from books. Okay. English teachers say that all the time, probably. The next one, heliophile. Heliophile. A lot of times when you see helio, think of the sun. I do believe that is Greek. So anyone who loves the sun. If you're a person that loves going to the beach, keep hitting the wrong button. You can't see it, but I get onto the wrong. It's distracting me. Okay. If you are a person who loves going to the beach in the summer to get a suntan, you might get cancer. So be careful with that. Always wear sunscreen, but you could be a heliophile. At this time of year, all the way until April, I'm a big heliophile. We don't see a lot of the sun right now, especially in December. Shortest day of the year is coming up. Like it doesn't get light until like 8 o'clock in the morning. It gets dark at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, if you're a heliophile, you hate that. You hate that. The next one is retrophile. Retro. You may know that word. Retro, back in time. Back in time. If something is retro, it's a throwback to something that happened earlier. So retrophile is someone who literally loves the past. Now, there are pictures of dinosaurs there. Doesn't have to be all the way that far. But if you're a person, there are few out there. If there are some people that like listening to vinyl for music put on a record player, you might be a retrophile. So you may enjoy that kind of sound on vinyl more than something that's streaming. I love streaming just because you can have thousands, millions of songs on your phone in your pocket. But some people, if they're retrophiles, they like that. Maybe they like the fashion of the 1970s. Not sure why you would, but if you do, you're a retrophile. The next one, umbra. Umbraphile. Umbra does come from the Latin umbrella. Think of that. If you have an umbrella, you're going to have some shade. Umbra, I believe, means like shade in Latin. So an umbraphile is one who loves eclipses. An eclipse, there are a couple different eclipses. This is not science class, but it's when the sun and the moon, overlap each other. There are some people, when there is a solar eclipse, and if they have a lot of money, umbraphiles will fly all around the world on that day to try to catch as many eclipses as possible. Umbraphile. You will not hear that word too often, but I wanted to give you that Latin and Greek umbra to know it would have, if any time you see that, think of shadow, think of shade. That might help you in the future. Umbra. The next one, let me bring this up a little bit. We're getting into the phobias now. 3 phobias right here. Acrophobia. We also have an ad for State Farm. Yeah, State Farm insurance. But look, I can't pay $36 a year. I'm a poor teacher. So we have to watch that. Actually, Lisa LaLiberty, she was my math teacher back in the day, long time ago. She was my math teacher at Lewiston High School. But this is how this works with phobias. If you have acrophobia, you're afraid of heights. If you're an acrophobe, that means you are a person who's afraid of heights. So if you don't like Dragon's Descent in Funtown, you're probably acrophobic. You probably have acrophobia. A couple of years ago, we went to Monkey See, Monkey Do, before COVID. And that's a place, if you've never been, you can climb up really high. You're tethered. So if you fall, you're not going to fall down to the ground. You might slip a couple inches. We went to Monkey See, Monkey Do. I thought I was acrophobic, but actually, as long as I was tethered in, I loved being up that high. So, but I don't really like, I don't like the idea of skydiving. Oh, our ad changed. So if you don't like skydiving, you might be acrophobic. You might have acrophobia. The next one, lots of people have this fear. You may know this one. It's kind of in everyday language. Arachnophobia. It's the fear of spiders. Very common. Arachna. Anytime you see arachna, think of spiders. And I'm not a huge fan of spiders, not a huge fan of snakes. Not sure what that's called. The fear of snakes. But I do have it. The great thing about the internet, we can look it up pretty, and there's a whole list. A lot of people, how do you say this word? See, the problem with some of these Greek words is that they are long. See, can I share? I will put on Google Classroom a whole list of phobias. You'd be surprised at, and if there is a name of a phobia, there's probably a reason because somebody has had that. All right, let me pull up the other screen. If you know how to pronounce this, now we can look it up pretty easily. Luckily, there's some, you can just look up how do you pronounce this word, but I think it's sharing on the screen right now. Yeah, this is the fear of snakes, which I definitely have. Ophidiophobia. Ophidiophobia, I think is how, what is that? Ophidiophobia, I think is how you pronounce that. The extreme fear of snakes. So usually some of these phobias, if we're actually using them 100% correctly, like people have to seek help for this. Like they might not leave their house because of this. And there are a lot of phobias. You know, some people might laugh at that. I'm guilty of it occasionally. But if it's really affecting somebody's life, like they're worried that they're going to encounter a snake, so they stay inside, you know, that's a serious problem. But I will never remember that. Ophidiophobia. Look at this thing here. I don't even know it. I can't even hip up. What is that? Let me not. What if this is really something bad? I don't want to share this. Hang on. Okay, I'm going to look at myself and see just in case it's not school appropriate. Oh, look at this. Okay. So it is school appropriate. So I'm not going to get fired. Let me share this. I can't say this word. It starts with hippo. Hippo usually means the front, by the way. And I think your hippocampus is the front part of your brain. I could be wrong about that, as I am sometimes. But this really long word, it's one of the longest words in the dictionary, you can see there. And in an ironic twist, it's the name for the fear of long words. So that extremely long word is the fear of long words. So if I'm teaching a class like I am right now, I do have the fear of long words because I'm worried that I won't be able to pronounce it correctly. But that really long word there is actually the fear of long words. It's ironic. The fear of long words should be a short word. So the people with that fear wouldn't have to say that long word to describe what they have. Irony. Very ironic. All right, we got some more. This is going on a little bit long. Sorry. Let me get back to the real. This is all real learning though, but remove that. Share the other one so we can get finished with this. Yeah. Okay, here we go. We did arachnophobia. Oh, is it sharing? It is. Necrophobia. Necrophobia. It's the fear of death, the fear of dead things. So that is one of the most common phobias. Anytime you hear necro, think death. Okay, and you'll hear that quite a bit, especially around Halloween. So if you're necrophobic, you probably hate Halloween. I mean, skeletons, just not a good time for you. Is this the last word? This is my favorite word of the list. Save the best for last. I don't know if this is a review or not, but if it's not a review, we might see it again later on. Of course, the more you see the words, the more you'll understand them. So that's why we do study guides. I really don't want you to memorize these, but hopefully if you encounter this later on in your reading, you might think back like, oh, I think we had that word, and then with the context clues. So hopefully you're not memorizing these things, but you're getting a pretty good idea of them. All right, so cacophony, fun word to say, cacophony. I think we have had this word. And that means just a mixture of all kinds of sounds. It's not a good thing. Cacophony. And I think the picture, even the one that I always remember is like when a band is practicing and they're just warming up. A couple nights ago, I went to the EL band and they had a concert, the EL band concert. It was amazing. They did a really good job. It was at the Franco Center. Maybe some of you were there because you had an older brother, sister, or whatever in there. But it was really good. But before the band started playing, they were all kind of like making sure their instruments worked. It was just like, there was one time I think in the school where you had the the fire alarm going off. That's not a cacophony. That's just one sound that's not good. Cacophony has to be a couple sounds together making a nasty noise. And so we had it was an old bell. It wasn't the new chime one that we have. It was an older bell. So we had a bell going off and we had the fire alarm going off at the same time. It was just a cacophony. It's usually not very pleasant to the ears, right? This is 25 minutes. It's a long one, but I hope you know everything there is to know about phobias, files, a couple other words put in there. Let's go Bitcoin.